Hello and welcome, I am Roy and Ninjazilla90, and today I will be doing a hands-on, side-by-side figure comparison on the S.H.MonsterArts Godzilla vs. King-Ghidorah, Godzilla 1991, and the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic Godzilla vs. King-Ghidorah, Godzilla 1991. And the question is, how do these figures compare? Which one is better than the other? And which one is better for your money? Practically, which one gives you more bang for your buck? But anyway, that is to be determined. So, with that said, let's get started. And now, here we have the S.H.MonsterArts Godzilla vs. King-Ghidorah Godzilla 1991 figure here on the left, and of course on the right we have the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic Godzilla vs. King-Ghidorah Godzilla 1991 figure on the right. The S.H.MonsterArts being made in Japan, and the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic figure being made in mainland China. So we do have quite a bit of difference to where the two figures were made. Now, we all know the S.H.MonsterArts version was sculpted by Yuji Sakai, and, well, the sculptor for the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic version, well, kind of still remains anonymous at this point. So, anyway, going over detail front and center, one difference I noticed right away, and I'm more than sure you guys noticed right away. The Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic is a bit taller and a little bit more thicker than the S.H.MonsterArts version, and it's also more heavier too. S.H.MonsterArts version being a bit lighter, because the S.H.MonsterArts versions are always a little bit more hollowed out. However, yeah, the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic figures are always a lot more solid. Also, you do notice, if you look at the chest, the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic version does have a more rounded out, more bulkier chest than the S.H.MonsterArts version as well. So let me slide to the back so you can basically see the difference right there. Also, you would notice the feet is the feet is also bigger on the S.H.MonsterArts. I mean, on the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic. I'm sorry. So yeah. So if you put the feet together like so, you're gonna notice that the Hiya Toys version is a bit thicker and bigger, which I've already stated that. Both also have really good head sculpts. Looking really nice. Both are accurate to the movie. Now, they do use two different Godzilla suits in the movie, so I mean, these are kind of based on two different suits, but they are technically very identically similar. So we do have that. And also, I'm trying to get the eyes in focus. So yeah, the eyes do look like they have a better paint scheme on the Hiya. So you do see more of that, the detail in the eyes on the Hiya than on the SH. And when I look at the SH, I didn't notice this at first, but yeah, mine does have the derpy eyes. Unfortunately, one of this pupil right here. Yeah, I'm trying to get that in focus. Yeah, it looks like it's looking up, while the other one It looks like it's where it's supposed to be. And if I look at the Hiya Toys version, oh yeah, the eyes are definitely painted darker, but if I look at the pupils and how the eyes are painted, that's not a problem. Now, of course, the inside of the mouth on both figures, let's take a look if I can. It's getting kind of close, so I have to put them to the side. Now, if you do notice, the inside of the mouth on the S.H.MonsterArts figure right here is darker, and it looks more like a blood red color compared to the Hiya Toys version, which has more of a fleshy toned pink. So both are realistic in my opinion, but also in contrast to the S.H.MonsterArts having darker gums and a darker palate at the roof of his mouth. The Hiya Toys version, however, does have a little bit more of a darker bone white weathered paint scheme on the teeth. So if you look at them closely, yeah, the Hiya Toys does have darker teeth than the S.H.MonsterArts, but however, we do have both do have those, accurate shark-like double rows of teeth in the mouth of both Heisei 1991 Godzillas. So that's another difference, and tongues are kind of both articulated on both, but I'm just not gonna fool with that right now. But anyway, taking a look at the dorsal spines, so trying to get both dorsal spines in focus to where we can look at them. Now, if you let me move. Okay, that's a little bit better. Now, if you do notice, because this should be noticeable, the dorsal spines on the S.H.MonsterArts version are more, well, at least the tips of the dorsal spines are more of a light gray colorization in contrast to the bone white colorization on the Hiya Toys version. Although dorsal spines on both are accurate, very accurately sculpted, but however, they're a little bit more pliable on the Hiya Toys version, and yeah, they're more like a harder resin on the S.H.MonsterArts. So I really wouldn't play around with the dorsal spines too much on either, because you don't want to break them. But anyway, it is what it is. And also, we do have his smaller gray, sort of like bone gray ridges on the top of his head. But although you do notice that the gray ridges on the top of the head going down the neck, with the dorsal spines match a little bit more with those smaller gray, maybe like I would say like mini dorsal spines, I guess you call them, matches a little bit better with the his bigger dorsal spines on the SH version. And yeah, they go from like a darker gray transitioning into that weathered bone white color right here on the Hiya. So there's a big difference with that as well. And if we turn them around, yeah, if we look at both the hand claws and toe claws, so we look at both the mani-pedis on both figures, they seem to be using the exact same colorization for the hand claws and toe claws. So that's where they would say, I would say, like they're both, the colors are like both exactly identical. But other than that, they do have some differences. Now, of course, as far as articulation, there is a lot of similarities with articulation, but there is some differences. If I can get them in focus, so let's bring them back for articulation. The head can move up and down on the SH. We can do the same with the Hiya. We can look left and right with the SH. We can do the same with the Hiya. But however, we can only cranium revolvus at the top of the neck and the opposite way. In this one, I believe, well, yeah, we can do the same thing actually. So we have equivalent head articulation, although the neck is a little bit stiffer on the SH. So that one I would be a lot more careful with. Arm articulation, I would say, you know, when it comes to the shoulders, the S.H.MonsterArts does have better shoulder articulation because we can easily rotate those shoulders all the way around and the opposite way. And the Hiya, the shoulder joints, a little bit more limiting. So although full rotation is possible, but you really have to heat the figure up, and I'm not doing that. And you can practically snap the joints if you do that. This is about as far as you can get the shoulders to go up on the Hiya without, you know, using your hairdryer or hitting it with any heat. So the SH does win out in shoulder articulation, but other than that, when it comes to just regular arm articulation, like bicep swivels, for example, like this, like you can do with the SH, the Hiya can also do with no problem. So we do have that. Yeah, it's a bit stiff, but I got it. As you can see, very possible on the Hiya as well. And we do have elbow articulation. So we do have a double joint in the elbow on the SH, and we do have the same on the Hiya. So the Hiya toys can articulate exactly the same in the elbow joints, and forearms can also rotate, starting with the Hiya. Show you guys that forearm rotation. Can we do that with the SH? And yes, we can. We can indeed rotate those forearms on the SH. And hand articulation is pretty much equivalent to. We can rock those hands forward and back and swivel them all the way around. Same is true with the other side. As you're witnessing, can we do that with the SH? Rock it forward and back, and yes, we can. Rock it forward and back, and yeah. And waist articulation, which one can lean forward a lot better? I would have to say that goes to the SH. So we can lean forward a little bit further with the SH. That's about all the Hiya toys is going to go. So we can look down a lot further with the SH. However, if you do notice, that also creates more gapping with the dorsal spines, unlike the Hiya. So let me put his tail down so we can see. So if we do look down like that with the SH, we have this huge gap in the dorsal spines right here. That's not an issue with the Hiya, although you know, you're really not going to be able to look down too much like so. But it does work. It's doable. Like, you don't really have to be looking down all that much like this. So you don't really need all crunched over. So it's kind of unnecessary, but it is doable with the SH, but not so much with the Hiya. But the Hiya does have good articulation. Other than that, anyway. But moving right along down to comparing the leg articulation, starting with the hips. Now, I would say the hips are a little bit looser on the SH once you get those ball joints loosened up with a little dish soap and baby oil once you heat it up and all that stuff. But they are still kind of limiting, so this is about as much as I'll be able to rotate them. And rotate them back, and as you can see, they do kind of like have like little sleeves inside the hips on the SH that kind of hinders hip articulation a little bit, but it's still doable. But that's about as much as you're going to split out with the SH. The Hiya, we can rotate the legs a little further because there's nothing inside hindering them, but we can't go all the way around with them. And can see how far we can rotate the legs the opposite way. About that much, technically. Let's put them back. We can split out about the same as the SH. The SH maybe slightly a little wider in comparison, but not by that much. So bring them back. Which one has the better knee joints? So we can bend the knees about that much on the Hiya. The SH, and yeah, we just popped this foot off. So we're trying to do a figure comparison, not play footsies. But anyway, we can bend them. They're pretty much equivalent in knee articulation. So there's that. As far as ankle articulation with the feet, I would say I would have to say S.H.MonsterArts might be a little bit better in that department, because we can point these feet forward and back, up and down on the ankles, and we can also rotate them all the way around with relative ease. Same is true with the other side, and there you have it. How does the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic compare in the ankle articulation to the MonsterArts? Ankle joints are a little bit stiffer, so we can't really get as much of a range of motion out of them as the MonsterArts, but they are still doable. I mean, it's not like very many people are going to be articulating the feet too much, but it is doable. As you can see, we can rotate all the way around a full 360 with relative ease with the MonsterArts. But however, yeah, we can't like point them forward as far as much as what we can with the SH. So the SH, I would have to say, has a little bit more better ankle articulation than the Hiya. But the Hiya still has some good advantages over the SH as well, and that would be in tail articulation, and that is what I'm going to be getting into now, starting with the SH. The SH tail articulation is a little bit more limiting. You would say, how is a figure that costs $100 more limited in tail articulation than a figure that costs $50? It's true. It is. I hate to steal words from Kurt Angle, but it's true. It's true. It's you know, damn. You get the point. But anyway, we can. And yeah, it popped off already. We can curl it this far, about this much, and we can curl it that far, about that much. To the other side, we can put it in an S curve about that much. So we still have good tail articulation. Don't get me wrong. The SH does have good tail articulation for what it is. We can also put it in an S curve going the opposite way. So we do have that. And we can also kind of, not too much. Put him in that Godzilla versus the Smog Monster pose, where it really doesn't go all the way underneath. But we do have good enough tail articulation to put him in a swimming pose, though. So we can do that. The only thing he can't do that the Hiya toys can do is touch his toes with his tail. So if we try that with the SH, yeah, that's a no-go zone. And I'm going to try it with the other side, bringing his tail to the other side. Trying to touch his toesy woesies with his tail. Yeah, not happening. Yeah, so, yeah, now it's giving me trouble to put his tail back together. Alright, now, here's where the Hiya Toys version definitely outshines the S.H.MonsterArts in tail articulation. Definitely the tail on this one is very satisfying. So let's straighten that tail out like so. So I'll demonstrate a much better than the S.H.MonsterArts version, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster pose. As you can see how the tail goes all the way underneath like that, opposed to the S.H.MonsterArts version. So we can get that full on bend. Ouch! And I just squeezed my thumb in the articulation cuts on his tails. So yeah, do be careful. And also, like I was saying, I was trying to demonstrate with this one, but yeah, that one you just can't do it with the tail. You can, like I was saying, look at that. You can touch his toes with his tail. Touch his knees with his tail. You can touch his, you can touch his belly with his tail. You can even, if he wants to, you can even scratch his head and whack himself in the head with his tail. Same is true with the other side. Bring his tail all the way down. See, look, touching those toesy woesies, touching his knees, and bringing his head this way. Poking his brains with his tail. So yeah. Hiya does have much better tail articulation over the SH all day, any day. And we can bring that tail down like so. Just trying to show you guys how well of an S curve we can put this in. So, like so. See that really nice S curve there? And let's put it in an S curve going the opposite way. Look how nice, look how good, look how smooth, look how buttery smooth that tail articulation is. And this is comparing a $50 figure to a $100 figure. And we could also put it in a vertical S curve like that. Sort of like a J-tail almost. And of course, can we do the same thing? Can we match that vertical S curve with the SH? Let's try it. Yeah. Let's give it one more try. As you can see, it's not quite happening, and this is about the closest I'm going to get it. So, yeah. So, yeah, that's the best I can get that with the SH. So, better tail articulation definitely goes to the Hiya. And also, before I forget, so give me a second, I'll go and get it. Alright guys, here I have it. One big advantage you have with the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic version, if you also have the Heat Ray version, or if you end up getting the Heat Ray version first and then this one is compatible with the Heat Ray from the Heat Ray version of the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic Godzilla 1991. So I can put that Heat Ray in the mouth in this one. This one, you can use a Heat Ray with it, although you have to have a Heat Ray accessory with a Machination stand. I do have one from my S.H.MonsterArts Godzilla 2019, but however, I'm just not going to go dig that up at the moment. But the cool thing is, you can also use the S.H.MonsterArts heat rays with your Hiya Toys figures as well. Since you're using Machination stands, you really don't have to stick these heat rays in the mouth in order for them to stay, because you don't really need like a plug for them that goes into the roof of the mouth. You just have them like on a clear like stand. That also works, but the downside to that is, yeah, you're basically seeing a clear stand with your heat ray kind of like on a pole. And so that basically, when you use this, it basically like this. Now the good thing about that, it kind of eliminates, you know, that visible stand. So, you know, both methods to using a heat ray or any type of like projectile like beam effect with your kaiju figures when it comes to Hiya Toys and S.H.MonsterArts. They both have their pros and cons, but since the S.H.MonsterArts beam and heat ray effects are on stands, where you just open their mouth and just line it up, I would say is compatible with your Hiya Toys figures. So, but your heat rays and like beam effects from your Hiya Toys figures are not compatible vice versa. So that's another thing I would have to say when it comes to comparing Hiya Toys and S.H.MonsterArts. But anyway, yeah, that pretty much concludes it for this figure comparison. Which figure do I think is better? I would say both figures have their own fair share of pros and cons, and quite personally, I would say, you know, when it comes right down to it, neither one is better than the other. Like I said, they both have their own unique pros and cons, and determining which one is better basically comes down to personal preference. But however, I would have to say that the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic version does come at a much more better, more affordable, more reasonable price range than the S.H.MonsterArts version. I don't even think the S.H.MonsterArts version is available anymore at retail. Now, I did pay, I think it was like $115, somewhere around that, for the S.H.MonsterArts version. The Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic version is around the $50, $60 range, which is a lot more affordable, which is around half the price to less than half the price of what the SH costs. So that's something to consider. And needless to say, the price that I paid for this one, you can actually get the Hiya Toys Exquisite Basic Godzilla vs. King-Ghidorah King-Ghidorah figure for that price. So yeah, and the price it costs for the S.H.MonsterArts 91 King-Ghidorah is like double to triple that. So yeah, you are getting more for less with Hiya Toys, so that's the advantage you get with Hiya Toys. Both sculpts to me are very movie accurate. I know this is like the Hokkaido suit. I forgot the name of this suit because it was supposed to be like based on two different suits, but to me, I mean, it's the same Godzilla. They look similar technically. So there's really, to me, there's really very minimal differences between the two suits they use in the movie. Like I was saying, you know, dorsal spine's a little darker on the SH than the Hiya. Paint scheme inside the mouth is a little darker on the SH than the Hiya. But other than that, yeah, like I said, comes down to personal preference. But anyway, guys, that pretty much concludes it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a really good rest of your day. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you guys all so much for watching. And as always, stay safe, take care, God bless, stay positive, stay powered up, and Peace out.